What is up, guys? I'm your friendly neighborhood webware fanatic, and today we just hit 800 subscribers, and I'm so appreciative and so thankful to all of you guys who always comment, watch these videos, like these videos, and all of you guys that are subscribed. It means the world to me, and I'm so proud of this community that we are growing, and I can't wait to see how big we grow in 2024. So, as appreciation for hitting 800, I will be doing a video today that I'm actually very interested in, but I think you guys will enjoy this video as well. And it's going to be a little bit polarizing, but basically I want to discuss who is the strongest hero in Marvel Champions for solo play. And I think that Doctor Strange is most commonly known as the strongest hero. There definitely are people that say that Spider-Ham is the strongest, and I think a even more minority group might say that a different hero is the strongest. But I think that the overwhelming majority currently has Doctor Strange as the strongest. And I basically just kind of want to reopen this discussion. Doctor Strange came out, I believe, in Wave 1, so he came out a long time ago. And there's been a lot of new heroes since then. And I think that the landscape of the game has changed a little bit. So I want to just, make this like an open discussion. I don't think that anything that I'm saying here is definitive at all. I'm just going to give my opinion. If you guys don't know already, I do believe that Spider-Ham is currently the strongest hero in Marvel Champions. So I have the greater less than sign right here for Spider-Ham above Strange. I do think that it is close. I think that they're both top tier heroes in the game. But yeah, I'm just gonna go a little bit into it, and if you guys disagree, please let me know. I'm gonna try to give my case for why I think Spider-Ham is stronger. So let's see. First, we're gonna take a look at some of the Reddit here. So basically, I had a gameplay the other day. It was my first time playing Spider-Ham. I played him in the pool aspect against expert Venom Goblin, and he felt insane, and he felt a lot more powerful than whenever I played Doctor Strange. So whenever I played this game, it felt like, it could have been a luck factor too, but I felt like I completely dominated Venom Goblin, and I felt like Venom Goblin, there was no turn where I was like fearful at all. So I just felt like Doctor Strange or Spider-Ham was the strongest hero in the game, and I made a Reddit post here, asking the question if Spider-Ham is stronger. And I have some comments like D20 said, yes, welcome to the Ham team. I don't know if he means that because I know that he notoriously dislikes Doctor Strange, but maybe he does mean that. Shout out to a D20. And then, I had Cast Iron Pots. He says that Ham is disgusting, the original Deadpool. I definitely agree that Spider-Ham is very powerful. We have someone here that said no, which is fair. I gave like a little reasoning why I didn't think that, and I do want to go a little bit into it. So, as I said here, that I don't have the most experience with either of them, but just my reference point was Venom Goblin, and Spider-Ham just demolished Venom Goblin. And I think I've talked about this before in previous videos, but I think that a lot of times there are heroes that are really strong against easier villains, like a Rhino or a Claw, and they might feel powerful because they're so strong against those easier scenarios, but they might have a more difficult time against the more tough scenarios. So that is something that I do want to go into for the criteria. And if you guys disagree with this criteria, that is completely fine. Please let me know that my criteria doesn't make sense to you guys, or you guys don't like that criteria. But for the easier scenarios, I think that both Doctor Strange and Spider-Ham can easily demolish any easy scenario like Rhino, right? And maybe Strange can demolish Rhino quicker and easier than Spider-Ham, but Spider-Ham still doesn't struggle against Rhino at all. So for me, Doctor Strange would get like half a point above Spider-Ham for those easier scenarios, but it doesn't weigh in that much of a factor because Spider-Ham still also easily defeats those villains, right? Both these heroes can easily defeat those villains. Most heroes in the game can defeat the easier scenarios quite easily, so I don't really weigh that as heavily as the more difficult scenarios, right? So Venom Goblin and Ronin, these are known to be the two toughest scenarios in the game. And at this point, I hadn't played Ronin with both Strange and Spider-Ham, but I did play Strange and Spider-Ham both against expert Venom Goblin. And Strange, for me, had a lot of... I played him in leadership, and I felt like he had a lot of trouble building up that damage to gun Venom Goblin down in one turn. And while his economy was good at turns that I had the Winds of Watum, I didn't feel that he had a consistent economy when I needed it for the big burst turn. And for Spider Ham, I mean, he was just completely in control of the match the entire game. Um, he was controlling the threat. He had allies on board. His hit points was high. I just felt like Spire him just and it easily built up that big. I had a 66 damage turn against Expert Venom Goblin, which I feel like maybe not this much damage, but definitely like 30 to 40 damage is very consistent for Spire him if you were to build up against Expert Venom Goblin. So because of that, I weigh that in a lot more because this Venom Goblin is a villain that I think that both of these heroes could struggle against, and most heroes do struggle against, but I just felt that Spire him completely dominated that. Um, and then here is Infinite Square. Well, he says that Spire Ham is definitely on the same tier as Strange. So, but then he thinks that Strange is still the stronger in the majority of scenarios and builds. And I could definitely see that, right? If you're weighing every single scenario equally, I think it's completely fair to say that Strange is a stronger hero because there's probably more scenarios that don't have Stalwart, don't have Steady, and are a little bit easier. And I think Strange would definitely dominate in all of those. Well, maybe not dominant, but like be a little bit better than Spider Ham. Because if you can stun and confuse every single turn, like with Strange, then that villain is pretty much neutered. And I don't think Spider Ham is going to be able to defeat that villain as easy as Strange would in that case. And then something often missed with Strange. Yeah, so Strange, I mean, his invocations are so powerful, and that's the reason why he's considered to be the strongest hero in the game. It's that those invocations, and I have them pulled up right over here, right? So Doctor Strange has an invocation deck where he has these cards right here: the Winds of Watum, Vapors of Valtor, Seven Rings of Ragador, and the Crimson Banes and Images of Icon. These are 5 cards in a separate deck that Doctor Strange has. And with his hero ability Spell Mastery, you can exhaust Doctor Strange, pay the printed cost of one of these cards right here, so 2 for the Crimson Bands, 1 for the Images, and then you can resolve the special ability on this card. So this card isn't in your hand, it's in its separate deck. So if you pay for this, you can activate the effect of this card. So for example, here it says stun enemy, do 7 damage to it. This one says confuse the villain and remove 4 threat from the scheme. Right, so what Infinite Square Whale was saying is that whenever you trigger these effects right here, the stun and 7 damage or the confuse and 4 threat, this isn't a thwart activation, and this one is not an attack activation. So it bypass. So Strange can still do it if he is stunned and confused. He can still trigger these effects because it doesn't have that attack keyword or that thwart keyword. I think that's a very good case for a very strong case for why Strange is very powerful. But for me personally, the thing with this deck, and I do have a problem with the deck, and obviously I don't have the most experience with Strange, so this could be like a complete like type of piling issue, but you can't control, or at least I can't control, what card is at the top of the invocation deck. So if it's not the one that I specifically need, it kind of hurts, right? And it's hard to set up big burst turns that way. The thing is, most of these cards are very good, so you can, have them be very good. But if you got a stun out with the Crimson Bands of Sidetrack, but then you desperately need a stun again, and this card is the only card in the invocation deck that's in the discard pile, you have to cycle through the entire deck to get this card back again. So in a situation like that, it could be a little bit rough, and I feel like it's hard to manipulate that deck because you have to cycle through it, right? There's no cheat way to get it, right? Like if you're playing with your regular deck, you can hold the card in your hand like forever, and there's ways to tutor cards to your hand and stuff like that. But with Strange's invocation deck, you have to cycle through the deck, and there are ways to cycle through that quicker, like with this alter ego ability, or with his identity specific ally Wong, where you can exhaust Wong and you can discard the top card of the invocation deck. So there's ways to get rid of it quickly, and having Strange ready, right, and having him use Spell Master will also cycle through it. But it's a little bit, to me, inconsistent for if you need a specific card at a specific time, you cannot control it as easily as with other heroes, in my opinion, because you can just hold that card in your hand or tutor it to your hand. So that is a strong case for Strange, but I felt a lot of clunkiness personally going through his invocation deck here. And then, yeah, so I kind of agree. And then Taka Brash says that he plays True Solo and he agrees that with that, right? So, yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that maybe Strange might be stronger in multiplayer because he can hand out toughs, right? So he has an invocation here Seven Rings of Ragador. Special is to give up to 3 characters each a tough stats card. Place this card in the invocation deck discard pile. So that's a good case for Strange being strong in multiplayer. But I mean, I think in solo, and I think solo is kind of the one of the few ways where we can really rank heroes, because in multiplayer it really depends on who you're playing with. There's so many factors that make it a little bit less consistent to be able to say that this hero is always stronger than this hero. But I think in solo, where it's just one hero facing specific villains, I think that's when we can really make the case for a certain hero being the strongest hero in the game. So I definitely agree with Taka Brash here, but I think everyone here makes good points. And then what really started this conversation for me was this Reddit post that was posted a month ago by Curious Respond. And I'm going to just quickly read over this. But basically he says, this may be a hot take, but I just don't see why everyone has Doctor Strange as pretty much the most powerful character by far. Right? And I would say this is definitely the case. A lot of people have him the strongest by far. I think that it's a conversation for sure between him and him. And I can definitely see other people making the case for any other hero in the game as well. I've heard people say stuff like Doctor Strange is in a tier on his own above every other hero. I've heard people say that Doctor Strange can defeat most villains with a blank deck, right? So if he only has his invocation deck and only his identity specific cards, he just have blank like resource cards and just still win, which may be true. But I know he definitely can't win that way against like Expert Ronin or Venom Goblin or Magneto, right? But yeah, I mean, to have a very high floor, I think it's valuable. But if that ceiling is lower than other heroes' ceilings, for me, that is a heavy factor in what I consider to be the strongest a hero in the game. But if you guys disagree with that, definitely let me know. I definitely think this is an open conversation. But he says maybe it's a way that I play, but I just don't see it. I do think he's powerful and have him in my top 10. So Doctor Strange is also in my top 10, but he's not in my top 5. I'm not gonna, I don't really know. I don't really have a specific ranking list right now in terms of like power rankings, so I don't know where I would rank Strange. He doesn't synergize with any aspect. And I definitely agree with that, right? I personally love Strange in the pool aspect because he doesn't synergize with any aspect. I feel he actually synergizes with the pool aspect a lot because of mulligans. And yeah, just funny things with the pool aspect actually work really well with Strange. And all you're basically doing is cycling through the invocation deck, and then it is powerful. I only play this guy actually plays multiplayer, and he only plays multiplayer, and that's funny he says that. So I can't really say. I play with Strange in multiplayer, and I feel like it's kind of the same thing. Like he's very useful on specific turns where he can get out those toughs with the 7 rings. But I feel like Spider-Ham, I've also played with Spider-Ham multiplayer, and I feel like he's very powerful as well. Let's see, I know he hands out status cards. Yeah, status cards are definitely a lot weaker in multiplayer in terms of the villain status cards, right? So stuns and confuses, I think, are not as useful in multiplayer. But toughs, like the 7 Rings of Ragador, is very useful in multiplayer. And then one of his invocation deck cards is useless if there are no status cards in play, right? So the Vapors. I mean, I think generally in multiplayer, there definitely will be at least one stat that you can switch out, and you could do funny gimmicks by switching out the Confuse with the Stun if you're about to confuse a villain again. So there are situations where it can be useless, but I think most of the time there's definitely a target for it. Signature Ally is really just good for invocation deck, which I think is good. I think Wong's a very powerful ally. He is Mystic, so that also helps him, and then for me, puts him somewhere in the top 10, and then he lists some other heroes. So I think this is a very interesting conversation. And so I have taken a look at the comments, and I feel like he kind of got shut down immediately. So, okay, so first we have a comment here with 73 likes by Helior. So he's actually Journeyman. Huge shout out to Journeyman. I think he's a super knowledgeable guy about the game. I've learned a lot of stuff from him, and I think he's one of like the most knowledgeable guys about rulings in the game. And he's definitely my go-to guy for ruling. So if you guys don't know any ruling, definitely hit up Journeyman. He knows. Or Helior on Reddit. He definitely knows what he's talking about. So it says there's a difference between ease of play and most powerful. Strange isn't immediately obvious, but here are some Eye of Agamotto openers. Okay, so the invocation deck is naturally a +1 hand size automatically. They do not take a spot in your hand, right? So that is a very good case, right? These 5 cards that we're talking about, they are never in your hand. So you have to pay this 2 costs to trigger it, but you don't have to play the actual card from your hand. So you have all the cards in your hand still in your hand. So you're not losing that +1 card from your hand size, which I think is very good. But I think that is balanced out by the fact that you can't control them end game, right? I think early game, these cards are invaluable because of that economy. But when you're all set up late game, you have that economy to do what you need anyways. And these cards are a little bit limiting in the fact that they have to get cycled and there's only one on top at a time, and you don't know what the next card is. Next, we have the triple Tufts here. Shuts down 3 villain activations, even if they're stalwart, right? Because the Tuff is a very good thing. So he's talking about 7 Rings of Ragador, right? We were talking about that a little bit earlier. I think that this is a super powerful card. But one thing that I will say about this card is that you use it once and it'll go into the discard pile of the invocation deck. So if you need Tufts for the next turn, you may not be able to use it again, right? There is a way right here with the Master of the Mystic Arts. So this is a Doctor Strange card where you can pay the printed cost of the top card of the invocation deck, like the 7 Rings of Ragador, and then you put it back on top of the invocation deck. So if you do a card like Master of the Mystic Arts, then you can use 7 rings, and then it goes in discard pile, it goes back on top, and next turn use the 7 rings again. But that's just really to have Strange constantly give out Tufts. If you're doing that, you can't use any of the other cards in your invocation deck. You have to just keep the 7 rings on top, right? So I think that's a huge limiting factor if you do want to use the OP power of the 7 rings. And if you're not doing that, then the 7 rings are just going to be for 1 turn. So yes, it's a super powerful effect, but you either choose to not use your other super powerful effects, or you have this super powerful effect 1 time. So I think it's a little bit more balanced there, and it's definitely very, very good whenever you get it out, especially in multiplayer. But I don't think that it is. I don't think that makes a case for it to be like insanely powerful, like tiers above every other hero in the game. Powerful, I mean. And then starting the game with +3 or +6 from Winds of Watum is Redonk. So yeah, I mean, this is the Winds of Watum. This is a 0-cost event. And if you use your Spell Master, you can trigger this card right here, where you just draw 3 cards, which is super duper insane. And if you have the Master of the Mystic Arts, you can pay 0 cost for right here to draw 3, and then trigger Spell Master to draw another 3. So the thing is, I've had so many turns as Strange where I'm drawing up like massive amount of cards in my hand. I have like 10 to 20 cards in my hand. But the thing is, what can he do with that, right? And in my opinion, you really need the Winds of Watum to be the card right in front of the Crimson Bands of Satarak for a big burst turn. That's whenever it's really important, right? Early game is really good to help you get your board set out, for sure. Like, I think that that's a very powerful thing, because when you're drawing all those cards, you can play a lot of cards and just get set up quickly. But a lot of times, no matter how set up you are, you want to prepare that setup for a big burst turn. And when you're talking about late game, I mean, the Winds of Watum is such a power boost, but the thing is, you can't control whenever it's coming up. It's just whenever it does come up, or whenever you realize it's coming up soon, then you trigger it, but you can't plan what's going to happen after that, right? So one thing that I really struggle with Doctor Strange is when I'm ready to gun the villain down, right, which isn't all the time, but whenever I enter that end game phase, I want the Winds of Watum, and then I want the Crimson Band of Satarak, right? I want the cards in this order, so I can have that big economy in my hand, and then play a bunch of like attack spells like Magic Blast, or play my Spell Mastery, or the Master of the Mystic Arts, I mean, to trigger Crimson Bands, and then trigger it again with the Spell Mastery. So the thing is, that's what I'm shooting for, to get my max damage to do that burst. And I cannot do that burst with Doctor Strange because I've never ever gotten this combo like back to back in a late game scenario, right? It's definitely happened like turn 1 or turn 2, but turn 1, turn 2, it doesn't matter at all. I need it at a specific point in time, and it's very, very hard to manipulate the invocation deck that way, because you can't control the way you're shuffling. So I have found that to be a very limiting factor. Yeah, and so I do think his burst damage is a little bit hard to control. Yeah, and then, or I mean, the Winds of Watum, I guess, was the point that we're talking about. I think that it's a great economy, but you can't control when you have that economy, and I would prefer to be able to control when that happens. I think that would make it a lot more powerful, but obviously, if you do that, he would be even more overpowered. So I think that's a good way for him to kind of be a little bit more balanced. And then, like he's saying the same that Infinite Square Whale, I mean, was saying, in a previous post, where bans an icon is not an attack or thwart activation, and his nemesis is very weak, which is good, right? Which makes him more powerful. So basically, his summary here is that it's the absurdity of incredible economy, unlimited status, and a busted trait. Spiritual meditation is a -3 deck size. He has an in-kit ready to spam invocations, but also gets, I'm not sure what that stands for. Spam invocations, but also gets, yeah, I'm not sure. And things like ever vigilant through traits. All the missing events are over the curve. Yeah, so he has access to a lot of strong missing events, which make him very powerful, and a +1 hand size. Hand size from Social Supreme is also very strong as well. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a strong case. I think that Strange is definitely a top tier hero in the game. I don't know if he is the strongest hero, and especially the strongest hero by a far margin. I don't know if that would be true. Um, yeah, so this is just people agreeing. And then right here, Kaylee Sanchez says that the presuming no piercing part is important, right? Because this person says here, 3 tough scans with 3 villain activations, presuming no piercing, right? So Ronin is one of the villains that's known for getting a piercing through fanaticism and through the boost card of the Kree Commando, which just gives his attack piercing. So getting that could hurt Strange really bad. That's actually happened to me in my Strange gameplay. When I played Ronin, he attacked me, and I had a tough. I was like, no problem. And then he got a piercing with the Kree Commando as a boost card and just did like a whole ton of damage to me. Coincidentally, Ronin is the only villain we ever faced who completely demolished our Strange player. Yeah, I can definitely see that happen. I think that Strange can defeat Ronin, but I think that, I mean, Ronin is going to be a tough matchup for everybody. And this person saying a really good strategy with Strange, right? And why tough is good against Ronin. It just takes a lot of resources, right? So if you have an ally, and then your hero Strange has tough, and then Ronin has piercing and overkill, you have the ally chump block. So the piercing hits the ally, then the overkill bleeds over to you, but your toughness can absorb that overkill. So that's a good way to prevent the piercing from piercing Doctor Strange's tough. So that definitely helps out. And my only problem with that is that it's so many resources just to cancel one activation, right? You need to have an ally that blocks, and you need to lose your tough stats. It's like 2 things to just cancel Ronin's 1 attack there. And then, yeah, this person prefers Strange in leadership to chump block with allies against Ronin. And then, yeah, so a lot of people are pretty much just agreeing, like, yes, this explains why Strange is so powerful. And yes, he is powerful, but I wanted more of a discussion on it, I feel like. And I feel like I personally feel like there's a lot more to be said, and it's not just so, it's not that, it's more of an open-end discussion for me, but I think a lot of people see it much more of a closed conversation, like it's already done. That Strange is definitely the strongest. And then, let's see, yeah, so this is a lot of the same points, right? He has access to Mystic cards, which are very, very powerful. This person says, it's the way you play. You don't think the invocation deck is OP, your priorities are all out of whack. Yeah, so definitely, I mean, I don't know about the priorities, but I think that when you're playing Strange, his strongest thing is definitely the invocation deck. So you definitely want to just cycle through this invocation deck over and over again. And I think that the original poster said something like that, right? He says that he doesn't synergize with any aspect. And I think that like all you're doing is basically using the invocation deck. So I think that he understands that the invocation deck doesn't synergize with any aspect particularly, except for the pool aspect, because mulligans, because I should go into that a little bit, right? So when the pool aspect card mulligan, if you have not played another card this phase, you can discard your whole hand and draw up to your fresh hand size. And with Doctor Strange, with the Spellmaster here, whenever you trigger this effect to activate these cards, you're not playing the Crimson Bands of Cyttorak or any of his invocation cards. You're just triggering their effects through the Spellmaster on Doctor Strange. So you can pay your 2 costs to trigger this effect and then still play the mulligan to draw up to your full hand size. So I think Doctor Strange actually synergizes very well with the pull aspect, even though he doesn't synergize with the other aspects. But I think this person understands that, and I think that he likes synergy with aspects. Let's see, and then, so this person right here says, I think he is slightly overrated, but he's still the best character in the game. So I agree that he's slightly overrated. I disagree that he's still the best character in the game. So this person says right here, people think he's the best at everything and the best at all times. Yeah, I think that he's actually, in my opinion, he's actually a lot more balanced than what people give him credit for. I think that there's a lot of things that other heroes do better than him, and I don't think that. I mean, we'll go a little bit more into it later, but I don't even think that he is the best overall, like, well-rounded character. Um, so strong early. Look at Domino. Yeah. So actually, okay, this guy, in my opinion, hit it like right on the head. He says that Doctor Strange doesn't have a huge build-out late game that compares, and I had the same experience with Doctor Strange. Right? It's definitely a lot of that early game that's helping out. But the thing is, with the more difficult scenarios, right? So I'm talking about like Magneto, especially, and Venom Goblin. You cannot just go through that scenario like willy-nilly. You really have to set up your board and build a strong board because these villains are much more difficult to be rushed down. So I think that against these tough, super duper strong villains, where you have to set out your board, Doctor Strange's build out late game is not as strong. So I definitely agree with this. I think that is a strong case for why Doctor Strange may not be the strongest hero in the game. Um, and then his invocation deck is very, very efficient and high value, and it requires zero builder, right? So these are really, really good cases for why invocation deck is so strong. But I think one downfall of it is that it's kind of RNG, right? You can't control which card is next. There are ways to cycle through it, and if you've already gotten rid of 4 cards, you definitely know what the last one is. But that inability to control that last card, I think, is very, very big. Says that Strange has a powerful late game, and if you get there, you basically just win always. He doesn't actually have as high a community report win rate as Captain America. So yeah, so I mean, about the only ones he doesn't have he doesn't have like a high win rate are the standing community champions of top difficulty for different reasons. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. So I always play build out, and I play build out with like almost all my heroes, and I don't think that Strange has. I mean, okay, you know what? To be fair, he does have a very powerful late game. I don't think that it's probably like it's not even one of the top 10 most powerful late games, even though he's definitely a top 10 hero. I think Spider-Man, Peter Parker has a stronger late game whenever built out. I think that Captain Marvel has a stronger late game. I think Iron Man has a strong late game. I think Spider-Ham. I think there's a lot of heroes that have a more powerful late game because they can line up their cards how you want, and they have the and whenever you're built out late game, you have massive economy, right? Doctor Strange will have also massive economy late game, but he can't control whenever he gets the Winds of Watum into the Crimson Band to really benefit off of it. Um, yeah. And then, yeah, in the win rates, yeah, so this is exactly what I'm talking about as well, like Venom Goblin and Ronin. So his win rates apparently, and I'm not sure how to check that, but his win rates against these two most difficult villains are not the highest amongst heroes in the game. I can definitely see why, and for me, I think that that is a huge factor because almost every hero can defeat most scenarios in the game relatively consistently. The biggest determining factors are Venom, Goblin, and Ronin, right? These are the villains that will really give heroes a tough time, and I think it's important to be able to defeat every villain consistently. So if you're able to defeat all the easy villains consistently, like very, very easily, but then you can't defeat Venom Goblin, for me, that means that you're not as strong as a hero as like another hero that can still defeat other like weaker villains consistently and easily, but just not as easily. But they can also defeat Venom Goblin and Ronin, right? I rate the hero that can defeat everyone, like especially the tougher ones, because that's the ones where you're having more trouble with. I rate those heroes a little bit higher. Um, this person says Strange makes a mockery of Venom Goblin. Yeah, I mean, I definitely on standard, he makes a mockery of Venom Goblin, but I think that expert is another level because expert you really have to gun that third stage down, and Venom Goblin has retaliate as well. Even though the Crimson Bands bypass the retaliate, everything else will ping the retaliate. Um, yeah, so it is a hot take. This person says that the original poster, it's not a hot take, actually. He says it's a wrong take. I thought it was just a hot take, and there is no way around it. So this is in reference to Strange not being the strongest hero. Since it's already been explained, why let me put it in a more streamlined and visual. Okay, so he says here that Mystic is the best trait in the game. Okay, and the Invocation is the best deck in the game. So I explained earlier why I don't think the Invocation deck, I think it's a little bit overrated because of that inconsistency of being able to set up um, those cards. And I actually do not think Mystic is the best trade in the game. This is not the first time that I've seen this. I think that Web Warriors are the best trade in the game, and obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I think that the Web of Life Incandescent is the best support card in the game, and I think that the Web Warrior allies are the strongest allies in the game, and allies are the most powerful card type. So having the strongest card type in the game with the strongest support, I think puts them above Mystic. Mystic has probably the strongest event in the game, and it has a very powerful upgrade in the Sorcerer Supreme. But I don't think it outweighs the Web Warriors. And yeah, I mean, this could easily change in about a month, right? Because Magic is coming out. So I just do want to preface that, like, if Magic comes out with a bunch of powerful Mystic supports and allies, like, Mystic is now like the best card, the best trade in the game. But I think right now, before the arrival of Magic, I still think that Web Warriors are the strongest trade in the game. And then basic value comparison between the 5 cards in his invocation deck and the best cards they make. Yeah, so he's just explaining how good Crimson. Yeah, definitely Crimson Bands, the images, rings. These are super duper powerful cards. The Winds of Watum, so powerful as well, right? And Vapors, it doesn't compare to anything, and it's the most unique one. Definitely agree. And I do think the Vapors is underrated because the shifting of statuses can be game changing, right? So definitely very unique cards that Strange has, right? These invocation that he has here, these 5 cards are so powerful, so unique. But I think that the downside is that the consistency of it, because you can't get them exactly when you want them, and the specific combo of wanting the Winds of Watum into the Crimson Bands of Cyterac is almost necessary for Strange to get a reliable burst damage. And I think that that is like a key thing that is a little bit overlooked with Strange in solo play against the toughest scenarios in the game. And it says, yeah, yes, bonuses are flashy. One important thing, stats are great, but not as strong in multiplayer. Yeah, so definitely as they are in solo. Most people around here definitely seem to be solo players. Yeah, I actually, yeah, and the only way you play the game, Strange will seem much stronger to you than he does. Yeah, I think in solo, Strange will seem stronger against the easier villains, but against the more difficult villains, like what another post was saying earlier, like Ronin and Venom God, I think Strange is definitely a little bit, I think he struggles a little bit more. He's probably still the most powerful, but I think people generally undersell the other heroes. Yeah, I agree with this. I think other heroes, when built out, have a lot more potential than Doctor Strange. Yeah, I think he makes a good point. You don't take into account the invocation deck. Yeah, I definitely think that if you're playing Strange, you do want to. So this first says, if you don't take into account the invocation deck, then you have to rethink your concepts of deck cycling or even start considering it. So for sure, I mean, he's correct with Strange needing to take a look at, needing to recycle and revolving the way you play him around the invocation deck. And I think that the reason why, I think we need to look at his other cards a little bit, right? So Master of Mystic Arts, we looked at that earlier. I definitely agree this is a very powerful card because it helps with the invocation deck. But if we look at his main thwarting card, 2-cost event, Astral Projection. Choose a scheme, remove 3 threat from that scheme. So it's just 2 costs for 3 threat. Then look at the top card of the encounter deck, and then you can remove 1 additional threat that way for the amount of boost icons on that card. So I've used this card, you guys can see my gameplay against Extra Venom Goblin, where I'm constantly using 2 costs for only 3 threat removal because it's a 0 boost card. Or it's like it has a boost effect instead of any boost icons. And 2 for 3 is not a powerful Thor card. This is a very lackluster Thor card, and I think to get it's just unreliable because of this effect right here. And the same thing goes for his attack event, Magic Blast, 3-cost event, deal 5 damage to an enemy, and then you discard the top card of your deck, and depending on what it is, you get an effect, right? So if you need a stun, then 3 for 5 plus a stun is invaluable. If you need to confuse, 3 for 5 and a confuse is invaluable. And if you get the 2 damage, it says 3 for 7. 3 for 7 is under the cost curve, right? Because the swing web kick is the standard, and the swing web kick is a 3 for 8 damage with Peter Parker Spider-Man. So this is actually under the cost curve. It's very expensive, and oftentimes you're going to be getting a 3 for 5. And if you're getting a stalwart or steady, the stun and confuse is a lot less valuable as well. So the point that I'm making with this is that Doctor Strange actually has a pretty weak thwart event and a pretty weak attack event. So it's not just the fact that his invocations are so powerful that you want to rely on them, but it's really the fact that his other cards are a little bit under the curve they're a little bit weaker, in that if you don't rely on his invocations, he becomes very weak. So it's not necessarily just that you want to rely on them, it's that you kind of have to, right? Doctor Strange playing without his invocations makes him a pretty weak hero, and obviously I'm not going to hold that against him, right? The invocation is a part of his kit, so I think it is key to him, but I think that is something that should be evaluated as well, right? Like these cards that you can get a little bit more consistently, right? Like with the Mystic Studies, you can get any Dark Strange card. With this Sanctum Sanctorum, you can get like a spell card like the Magic Blast and stuff like that. And these cards you can hold in your hand, they're not going to be as powerful as his invocation. So you do want to revolve the deck around the invocations, not just because they're the strongest, but because if you don't, Strange is going to be pretty weak. And then the last comment here says, Strange is a lot of drawing and manipulation to pick some of the effects of this list. Yeah, so he gets the stuff, and then in solo that ends almost any game. Yeah, I definitely agree, right? In solo, this ends almost any game, maybe like a good 80 to 90% of games, but not those very, very tough, those top tier villains. And I think that if he struggles against those top tier villains, I don't think that he's the strongest hero in the game, especially not by far. And then, so yeah, he just makes some more points. Yeah, okay, so I mean, yeah, I mean, they say that his power level is driven largely by the bias towards solo play. So, I mean, discussion that I really want to talk about right here is for solo play, and I would actually make the case that Strange is actually stronger in multiplayer because the tough stats is the big thing that helps him out in multiplayer, and because you can give every like 3 identities a tough stats card, right? And then for solo, I mean, the Stunned and Confused is super powerful in solo, but some enemies have Stalwart and some enemies have Steady, especially the tougher villains, so that makes them a little bit weaker there. So I made a little tier list here, and it's kind of like just a makeshift type of tier list, and I only have 3 things here, right? Just economy, burst damage, and survivability, and I'm just really gonna do a quick comparison between what I think between Spider-Ham and Doctor Strange. Okay, so I'm just gonna put whichever one of them I think wins this category here for economy, burst damage, and survivability. So for economy, Doctor Strange I think has very good economy because of the card right here, the Winds of Watum, right? This invocation here that helps him draw. He has the Eye of Agamotto as well, which generates that wild resource, and he has very cheap cards in his invocation deck, right? So these are very cheap cards to play, especially the 0 cost ones right here. So that makes his economy good. But if we look at Spider-Ham's effect is after he takes any amount of damage, place 1 tune counter on him, then each tune counter on Spider-Ham can be spent as if it were a wild resource. So, I mean, I think Spider-Ham is one of the highest economy heroes in the entire game. He can just stock on all those wild resources. And obviously, if you get a Shadow of the Past, his Shadow of the Past would take away all your counters. But he has a way to block Shadows of the Past with I don't think so right here. And I mean, if you already got it out, you can play around that. But I think that Spider-Ham's economy is kind of unmatched. And I actually have Spider-Ham as the higher economy hero. So I'm going to put him as within this category. And if you guys disagree with that, definitely let me know. Because I think that Spider-Ham, you can really save that stuff and playing around it and just get all those counters. And I think that that's going to be, not only does he have the potential to play more cards, but he has the consistency of getting that economy over Doctor Strange. Okay, so next we have burst damage. And I've already talked about this before, but I think Doctor Strange has very, very low burst damage compared to a lot of other heroes. I think that he's not even a top 10 in burst damage. And with Spider-Ham, I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen my playthrough against Venom Goblin, and I am definitely using the laser swords here to help out. But I think even without that, he has the economy to play 3 Swing Web Pigs easily, and he has an easy way to get those cards in his hand and save in his hand because he's drawing so much with Petulant Pig, stuff like that too. So I think that for me, Spider-Ham definitely takes a cake in burst damage as well. And then finally, we have survivability, right? So I've heard cases that people say that Dark Strange is a very tanky hero. Not necessarily tanky in like his innate tankiness, but because of the tough stats cards from the 7 Rings of Ragador, you can give 3 characters each a tough stats card. You can give this on 2 allies as well, right? So those allies can block for you, take the toughs, and you can also take the tough, right? Or take the damage and have the tough block it for you. So that is very good. But other than that toughness right there, he really has no other way or no other addition to his survivability, right? He has the standard curve for everything else, right? He has 10 hit points, which is the average, 3 recovery, which is the average, and 2 defense, which is the average. So if an attack goes through, right? If you do not have the 7 rings of Ragnarok when you need it, if the villain somehow gets lucky and gets multiple attack activations on you, and an attack goes through, Doctor Strange could get really, really hurt, and then he'll have to flip down to recover by 3, and it might be hard to recover. And I definitely felt that for myself when I played Doctor Strange, and I think that that is actually, I don't think he has one of the strongest survivabilities in the game. Um, I think that he relies a lot on 7 rings and he relies a lot on toughness. But if you don't get this right, and I talked about before how the invocation deck could be a little bit more difficult to play in the correct way, I think that this could, I don't think Doctor Strange is that good in his survivability. And if we compare him to Peter Porker here, Peter Porker, he has 12 hit points, which is very high. He has 5 recovery, which is also above average. And then whenever you recover, you can get a tune counter on him as well. So he kind of promotes recovery. And he has probably the best um, defensive upgrade in the entire game right here in cartoon physics, right? It's a 1 cost upgrade, so you play it down. This is, in my opinion, the best safety net in the game, right? You can play them both down. And you can have them both down at once because there's no limits on them. So he has 2 copies of cartoon physics. You place cards just on the field. Then as an interrupt, not a forced interrupt, so you can pick when you want this to trigger. When your identity would take any amount of damage, discard this card, wiggle your body, and prevent all but one of that damage. So you can still have your allies block for you. You can take a look at what the boost card is and see if it's a lot of damage or not. And then if you don't want to, just take the damage on Spider-Ham. But at the moment where you get unlucky or you realize, oh crap, the villain is hitting me for 15, you can then just use cartoon physics, discard it because it's already on the field, and you only take 1 damage, which will still give Spider-Ham a tune counter for him to get his economy higher. So I think that, Spider-Ham arguably is one of the strongest defensive characters in the game. Cartoon physics may not be the strongest defensive card. It's definitely in the discussion for it, but it's definitely the best safety net in the entire game. And I think that that makes him a lot more tanky and gives him more survivability than Doctor Strange. So, these are just 3 random categories, or not really 3 random categories. Actually, these are the categories that I evaluate the most when I'm ranking a hero's power rankings, right? And I don't have stuff like Thord up here. I think that both of these guys have really good thwarting, so I don't think that's really going to change anything. But I think that thwarting can easily be compensated with aspect cards. I think that that's heroes that have weaker thwart, right? Like I played Peter Parker Spider-Man, who has a relatively bad thwarting in his kit. I played Groot, who has kind of bad thwarting in his kit as well. I played She-Hulk, right? I played both these heroes, and I have gameplays with these heroes defeating Expert Venom Goblin, where they're removing massive chunks of threat because of the aspect cards. So I think that high threat removal can easily be compensated through your aspect cards. And for this stuff right here, right, the economy, burst damage, and survivability, these are things that are much more difficult to compensate through aspect cards. And if a hero has these 3 elements in their kit, like for me, that's the most valuable thing. And personally, I think that Spider-Ham beats Doctor Strange in all 3. Even with the economy here, right? Even though Doctor Strange has this invocation deck where it's kind of like a +1 hand size because you don't need to play this card. Sometimes you definitely still need to play his other cards to get his stuff off, right? You can't rely only on the invocation deck, especially on the more difficult scenarios, to help you get rid of minions, to help you get rid of side schemes, like all that stuff. So I do think that even with that, the economy of Spider-Ham is unreal. So yeah, this is where I have these guys lined up. And yeah, I personally think that Spider-Ham currently right now, before the release of Magic may be the new strongest hero, or she may give Mystic cards to Doctor Strange to make him the strongest hero once again. But I think right now, I have Spider-Ham as the strongest hero in the game for solo play. And yeah, definitely let me know if you guys agreed or disagreed with anything here. I feel like I feel there might be a lot of people that disagree, which I am totally open to hearing all of y'all's opinions. Definitely let me know what specific points that you guys agree or disagree with, right? And if there's anything that I missed out on Spider-Ham, please let me know in the comments, like points where maybe he's weaker or stronger. And if you feel like that I'm undervaluing Doctor Strange in any type of way, definitely let me know too, or what points that you guys think I'm wrong in, right? I do think Doctor Strange is a super duper powerful hero. For me, I just really value that Ronan the Accuser, Venom Goblin, right? I just really value being able to defeat those guys with consistency and ease in my criteria. And let me know if you guys agree with that criteria as well, right? So if you guys think that Doctor Strange is the strongest hero in the game and still agree with me that he has more trouble with Venom Goblin and Ronan than Spider-Ham, let me know, right? Be like, hey, I do agree that Doctor Strange struggles against Ronan and Venom Goblin more than Spider-Ham and other heroes do, but I don't think that that is important when evaluating a hero's strength, right? Let me know, because that's just my opinion for what I evaluate. So if you guys agree with that part, but not but not the importance of that weighing into a hero's rankings, let me know. Yeah, I'm open to changing my criteria. This is kind of the criteria that I kind of feel really good about, and I mean, it's just the way that I kind of play the game. But if everyone's like, that criteria makes no sense, I mean, I definitely want to know about that. And definitely let me know if you guys do think that Doctor Strange defeats Ronan and Venom Goblin much easier than Spider-Man. I want to know if you guys think that as well. Um, and definitely, I want you guys to check out my playthroughs too if you have not. If you don't have a reference point, like if you never played Spider-Man or Doctor Strange, because I've only played these two heroes in the past month, right? So I didn't really throw my hat in the ring or give my opinion to the previous post here, because whenever this post was made, I hadn't played Doctor Strange or Spider-Man, so I couldn't really say anything. But recently, I have played both of them, and I've only played them against Venom Goblin and Ronan. And my experience with them, I have the playthroughs on my channel, and I'll probably post the links in the description. It's just Spider-Ham versus Expert Ronan, Spider-Ham versus Expert Venom Goblin, and then Doctor Strange versus Expert Venom Goblin, and Doctor Strange versus Expert Ronan. So yeah, I mean, you guys can watch those playthroughs, compare it, and let me know if you think that I just got really lucky with Spider-Ham or something like that, or unlucky with Doctor Strange. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that Doctor Strange had no problem there. And I mean, yeah, that Venom Goblin playthrough, that was with Spider-Ham. That was my first time playing Spider-Ham. The Venom Goblin playthrough with Doctor Strange was my first time playing Doctor Strange. And then the Ronin playthroughs were my second time playing both the characters, at least in solo. I have played them more in multiplayer as well. But yeah, I mean, let me know what you guys think. Yeah, let me know how you guys weigh in those more difficult scenarios. And yeah, I just want to open a discussion here. I don't think that I'm definitively right or anything like that. I just want to see what the community thinks. And if the community, I know right now the community has a overwhelming majority vote in Doctor Strange. And I'm wondering if a lot of people can or are open to switching sides and possibly hearing out the possibility of maybe Spider-Ham being the strongest, or at least having them in the same tier where they're like kind of neck and neck, and that it can be debatable either way. So yeah, yeah, this is a very interesting discussion for me. I'm very interested to know what you guys think, or who you guys think is the strongest hero in Marvel Champions. Thank you guys once again for 800 subs. I am super duper appreciative of that, and I can't wait to see how this community grows. I'll see you guys in the next one.